Troy has finally fallen. After 10 years of brutal warfare, thousands of dead soldiers, one extremely suspicious wooden horse, and enough Greek drama to keep poets employed for the next 3,000 years, the most powerful king in Greece is finally sailing home. His name is Agamemnon. He commanded the Greek coalition. He survived the Trojan War. He helped destroy one of the richest cities in the ancient world. And now he is returning to his palace, loaded with treasure, glory, and a captured Trojan princess. You would think this is where the hero gets his happy ending. Absolutely not. Because waiting at home is his wife, and she has spent the last 10 years planning to murder him. Which, to be fair, has something to do with the fact that before Agamemnon sailed to Troy, he sacrificed their daughter. So yes, there are some unresolved marital issues here. And somehow, the dead daughter isn't even the beginning of this family's problems. Agamemnon was born into the House of Atreus, which might be the single worst family to marry into in all of Greek mythology. This family tree contains adultery, murder, cannibalism, revenge, child murder, more cannibalism, more revenge, and enough generational trauma to keep every therapist in ancient Greece fully booked. And it all begins with Agamemnon's grandfather, Tantalus. Tantalus was a king who was allowed to dine with the gods, which is an incredible privilege. Naturally, he ruined it. Tantalus decided he wanted to test whether the gods were really as all-knowing as everyone claimed. And apparently the best experiment he could think of was murdering his own son, Pelops, cutting him into pieces, cooking him, and serving him to the gods for dinner. This man looked at divine immortals and basically thought, let's see if they notice they're eating my child. They noticed, obviously. The gods restored Pelops and punished Tantalus by sending him to the underworld, where he was condemned to stand forever beneath fruit he could never reach and beside water he could never drink. This is where we get the word tantalize. And you might think watching Grandpa get eternally tortured for feeding his son to Zeus would encourage the rest of the family to behave themselves. It did not. A few generations later, Agamemnon's father Atreus discovers that his brother Thyestes has been sleeping with his wife. Atreus wants revenge. And because apparently nobody in this family has heard of divorce, he chooses the most horrifying option imaginable. He kills Thyestes' sons, cuts them up, cooks them, and serves them to their father at a banquet. Yes, again, cannibalism. Same family, different dinner. Only after Thyestes has eaten does Atreus reveal what was actually on the menu. At this point, the House of Atreus is basically running on one simple rule. You hurt me, I hurt you worse. Blood demands blood, revenge creates revenge, and every generation inherits the bill from the one before it. Keep that in mind, because it is going to destroy practically everyone in this story. Agamemnon grows up and eventually becomes king of Mycenae, one of the richest and most powerful kingdoms in Greece. He has armies, ships, gold, political influence. And he marries Clytemnestra, a powerful Spartan princess and sister of Helen. Yes, that Helen. Helen marries Agamemnon's brother Menelaus, king of Sparta. So everything is working out beautifully. Agamemnon has Mycenae, Menelaus has Sparta. The brothers are married to two famous sisters. The family is powerful. Nobody is currently being served at dinner. And then Paris arrives. Paris is a prince of Troy. He visits Sparta while Menelaus is king, and when he leaves, Helen leaves with him. Whether Helen was abducted, persuaded, or willingly ran away depends on which ancient version you're reading. But Menelaus doesn't particularly care about the distinction. His wife is gone, and she's in Troy. He wants her back. For Menelaus, this is personal. For Agamemnon, this is an opportunity. Because getting Helen back means assembling the Greek kings for a massive expedition against Troy, an enormously wealthy city positioned near vital trade routes. So Agamemnon summons Greece. And Greece actually shows up. Odysseus comes, Ajax comes, Diomedes comes, Nestor comes, and most importantly, Achilles comes, the greatest warrior alive. An enormous fleet gathers at Aulis. Tradition would eventually remember it as roughly 1,000 ships, thousands upon thousands of warriors preparing for what is supposed to be a glorious expedition. Agamemnon is commander of the entire thing. He is about to launch the greatest war of his age. One tiny problem. There is no wind. Nothing. The ships sit there, day after day. The sails hang uselessly. The fleet cannot move. Days become weeks. Food starts disappearing. Soldiers become restless. Men begin getting sick. An enormous army assembled for legendary warfare is basically stuck in a parking lot. And when you're living in Greek mythology and nature suddenly stops cooperating, there's usually one explanation. Somebody has annoyed a god. The prophet Calchas eventually reveals the problem. Agamemnon has offended Artemis, and Artemis will not release the winds unless Agamemnon pays a price. Not gold, not cattle, not treasure. His daughter, Iphigenia. Agamemnon now has a choice: abandon the expedition and protect his child, or sacrifice his daughter so the fleet can sail. And this is the moment that defines everything that follows, because Agamemnon chooses Troy. But there is another problem. Iphigenia isn't at Aulis. She's home with her mother. So Agamemnon sends Clytemnestra a message. Bring our daughter. She's going to marry Achilles. Imagine being Clytemnestra. Your husband has assembled the greatest army in Greece. Then suddenly you receive wonderful news. Your daughter is going to marry Achilles, the greatest warrior alive. You travel to Aulis expecting a wedding. You bring your daughter. You arrive. And there is no wedding. There is an altar. The ancient versions disagree about exactly what happens next. Some say Artemis saves Iphigenia at the final moment and replaces her with a deer. Others give us the much darker version. The blade comes down, Iphigenia dies. Either way, something inside Clytemnestra dies too. Because from her perspective, her husband just tricked her into delivering their own daughter to a sacrificial altar so he could go fight a war over another man's wife. And then the wind begins to blow. Imagine that silence. The sails finally fill. Thousands of Greek soldiers celebrate. The ships begin moving toward Troy. Agamemnon has gotten exactly what he wanted, and standing behind him is a wife who will remember this moment for the next 10 years. The fleet sails away. Clytemnestra stays home, and the clock starts ticking. The Trojan War becomes a nightmare. 10 years. 10 years of sieges, raids, battles, disease, funerals, and men dying for a city that refuses to fall. And Agamemnon remains supreme commander. Which would be difficult enough if Agamemnon weren't also incredibly talented at creating additional problems for himself. Because Agamemnon is powerful. He's also proud, greedy, stubborn, and deeply committed to winning arguments that absolutely do not need to happen. By the 10th year of the war, this nearly destroys the entire Greek army. Agamemnon has taken a captive woman named Chryseis, whose father happens to be a priest of Apollo. Her father comes to the Greek camp begging for her return. Agamemnon refuses. Bad decision, because Apollo hears about it. And Apollo responds by sending a plague through the Greek camp. Men start dying. Eventually, everyone figures out what is happening. Give the woman back! Agamemnon finally agrees, but he has a problem. His pride. If he gives up his prize, he wants somebody else's, and he chooses Briseis, the woman awarded to Achilles. Let me emphasize how spectacularly stupid this is. You are 10 years into a war. Your army is exhausted. The enemy still has its walls. And your greatest military advantage is a nearly unstoppable warrior who can turn the battlefield into a personal highlight reel. So naturally, Agamemnon publicly humiliates him. Achilles is furious. He stops fighting, just walks away. And suddenly, the Greeks discover something extremely inconvenient. They really needed Achilles. The Trojans, led by Hector, begin pushing the Greeks backward. Greek soldiers die. The fighting reaches the ships. The entire expedition Agamemnon sacrificed his daughter to launch is now in danger of collapsing because Agamemnon couldn't tolerate losing an argument over a captive woman. Eventually, Patroclus, Achilles' closest companion, enters battle wearing Achilles' armor. Hector kills him, and Achilles returns. Not because he has forgiven Agamemnon, absolutely not. He comes back because he wants Hector dead. Achilles kills Hector. The war continues. Achilles himself eventually dies. The wooden horse changes everything. And finally, after 10 years of failure, Odysseus comes up with one of history's most famous ideas, the Trojan horse. The Greeks pretend to leave. The Trojans bring the enormous wooden horse inside their city. Greek warriors hidden inside emerge at night. The gates open. The army returns. Troy burns. After 10 years, Agamemnon has finally won. And this is where the story becomes almost cruelly perfect. Agamemnon survived everything. He survived the war. He survived Troy. He survived 10 years of battle. He is returning as the victorious King of Kings. His ships carry treasure, and among the captives he brings home is Cassandra, Princess of Troy, priestess, prophet, and possibly the worst person imaginable to bring along when you're unknowingly sailing toward your own murder. Because Cassandra can see the future. Apollo cursed her so that her prophecies would be true, but nobody would believe her. And Cassandra knows exactly what is waiting in Mycenae. She knows this homecoming is not a celebration. It's an execution. She warns them. Nobody listens. Of course nobody listens. That's literally her curse. Meanwhile, back in Mycenae, Clytemnestra has not spent the last 10 years patiently knitting. She has been ruling, remembering, and planning. She has also taken a lover. His name is Aegisthus, and if that name seems like just another random Greek character, wait. Remember Thyestes, the guy whose children were murdered, cooked, and served to him by Agamemnon's father? Aegisthus is connected directly to that branch of the family and is the son of Thyestes, because apparently this story wasn't interconnected enough already. So, while Agamemnon has been fighting Troy, his wife has partnered with a man whose family also has an extremely legitimate reason to hate the House of Atreus. 10 years of resentment, 2 separate revenge stories, 1 returning king. This is going to go wonderfully. Eventually, signal fires announce that Troy has fallen. Agamemnon is coming home, and Clytemnestra prepares the welcome. She doesn't meet him screaming. She doesn't attack him at the gate. She's smarter than that. She welcomes him like a victorious king. Sweet words, celebration, luxury. She even lays out magnificent purple or crimson fabrics for him to walk across. Agamemnon initially hesitates because walking over such extravagant material could look like something reserved for the gods, which would be hubris. And Greek mythology has repeatedly demonstrated that hubris is basically the divine equivalent of clicking, "Please ruin my life." Clytemnestra persuades him. Agamemnon walks across. The king enters his palace, his home, the place where he should finally be safe. And then Clytemnestra prepares him a bath. Just think about the irony here. For 10 years, Agamemnon has probably slept surrounded by guards. He has lived among armed soldiers. He has watched men die around him. He has survived one of the most famous wars in mythology. Now he's finally home. No armor, no battlefield, no Hector, no Trojan army. Just warm water, his wife, and then the trap closes. The exact details vary depending on the version. In Aeschylus, Clytemnestra traps Agamemnon in cloth before striking him. Other traditions describe the murder differently, but the ending is the same. Agamemnon cannot defend himself. Clytemnestra strikes, again and again. And the commander who survived 10 years of Troy dies helpless inside his own palace. Not on a battlefield, not beneath Troy's walls, not fighting Hector, not in some heroic final stand. At home, killed by his wife, the woman he betrayed before the war even began. And Cassandra? She already knows she's next. She enters the palace anyway, and she is killed too. Then Clytemnestra does something extraordinary. She doesn't pretend Agamemnon died naturally. She doesn't hide. She doesn't run. She stands behind what she has done. Because in her mind, this isn't murder. It's justice. Agamemnon killed our daughter. Now I have killed Agamemnon. Debt paid. Except this is the House of Atreus. The debt is never paid. Because now we reach the question ancient Greek audiences wrestled with for centuries. Who exactly is the villain here? Agamemnon sacrificed his daughter. Clytemnestra murdered her husband. Agamemnon believed he was serving the Greek army and pursuing victory. Clytemnestra believed she was avenging her child. Every act of revenge feels justified to the person committing it. And every act creates another victim who now wants revenge. Remember the family rule? Blood demands blood. Agamemnon and Clytemnestra have a son, Orestes, and Orestes grows up knowing that his mother murdered his father. Eventually, Apollo gives him an order: avenge Agamemnon, which means killing Clytemnestra, his own mother. Fantastic! Grandfather serves children for dinner. Father sacrifices daughter. Mother murders father. Now son must murder mother. This family desperately needed literally any conflict resolution system besides homicide. Orestes returns. He kills Aegisthus. Then comes Clytemnestra. In the most brutal versions of the scene, she begs her son to stop. She reminds him, "I am your mother, the woman who gave birth to him, the woman who nursed him." Orestes hesitates. Then he kills her. Orestes immediately discovers the problem. Killing your father's murderer might be vengeance, but killing your mother is still matricide. And Greek mythology has supernatural beings specifically assigned to that department. The Furies come for him, ancient goddesses of vengeance. They pursue Orestes relentlessly. He begins to lose his mind. And finally, after generations of murder, the story reaches something completely unexpected: a courtroom. Orestes is put on trial in Athens. Apollo argues for him. The Furies demand punishment. Athena presides over the case. And instead of another knife, another axe, another murdered child, or another revenge banquet, the cycle is finally confronted through judgment. Orestes is acquitted. And symbolically, the curse that has consumed generations of this family finally begins to break. Not because somebody committed a bigger murder, because somebody finally stopped answering blood with more blood. That's why Agamemnon's story is so much bigger than the Trojan War. Troy wasn't really his greatest enemy. His own choices were. He sacrificed Iphigenia to make the ships move. That decision created Clytemnestra's hatred. Clytemnestra's hatred produced Agamemnon's murder. Agamemnon's murder forced Orestes toward revenge. Orestes' revenge created another crime. One decision keeps producing another, and another, and another. There's even a strange archaeological epilogue to all of this. In 1876, Heinrich Schliemann excavated at Mycenae and discovered royal graves filled with extraordinary treasures. Among them was a famous golden funerary mask. Schliemann supposedly believed he had found Agamemnon himself and announced, "I have gazed upon the face of Agamemnon." There was just one problem. The mask appears to be centuries older than the traditional period associated with the Trojan War. It almost certainly wasn't Agamemnon. And yet, people still call it the Mask of Agamemnon. 3,000 years later, the myth is still winning. And maybe that's because Agamemnon isn't remembered as a perfect hero. He's much more interesting than that. He was enormously powerful and strangely powerless. He commanded kings but couldn't control his own pride. He assembled a legendary army but destroyed his own family. He sacrificed his daughter for a war, won that war, destroyed Troy, returned with treasure, walked into the richest palace in Greece as the most victorious king of his generation, and died in his own bath. Agamemnon spent 10 years trying to conquer a city surrounded by walls. He succeeded. What he never understood was that the decision that would eventually kill him had already been made before the first Greek ship ever reached Troy. The Trojan War made Agamemnon the king of kings, but the price he paid to begin it made sure he would never truly come home.